everyone, and welcome to this special edition Fran Tips. My name is Joan Winchester, and I am the Senior Vice President of Franchise Expansion for FranServe. And I also serve on the executive team, and I'm so excited because finally today I have the opportunity of having with us an expert and an attorney, Brian Lincer, and he is a partner at the Internicola Law Firm. And I'm so excited because we get a lot of questions, that are probably should and better be answered by attorneys. But this one topic in particular, I asked Brian a few weeks ago if he wouldn't mind just addressing and clarifying for us. But before we jump in, Brian, I just want to ask you, would you just quickly tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Joan. I appreciate it. Thanks for the invite to come on. I know the topics that we're going to cover today, there are a lot of questions on that, and I think it's valuable for anyone in the franchise world to take a look at this and really have a good understanding of what that's about. But my name is Brian. I'm a partner at the Intercola Law Firm. We represent franchisors only. We represent currently about 375 franchise brands, and we have different, from different I guess places in the franchising process, from 0 units starting up, have a business want to turn into a franchise, to exiting to private equity, 9-digit transactions that we're working on. So we get a good view of what's possible at the outset and kind of what that lifespan looks like for a franchise system. So we're happy to share any information we can. Anyone has questions, I know if you ever have questions or anything like that, we're happy to answer anything we can and jump on a call. But looking forward to having this conversation because I know it's one that comes up very often.
So I'm so excited because Brian and his team are as passionate as we are at FranServe about helping entrepreneurs and contributing to the growth of the industry. And that's why we have trademarked our tagline, franchising is our superpower. And I think you guys have taglined yours, right? Entrepreneurs kick ass. You've done that too. Yeah. There you go.
We have to take it down
crazies.
The Disney trips, but that's our tagline. That's what we believe, and similar to what superheroes, and we believe entrepreneurs are superheroes, and they do kick ass at the same time. So
there you go.
It works well.
So, I know we could spend days, on the do's and the don'ts, but that's not the purpose of our meeting today. I want you to share, see if you can share with our audience the differences, and the models on the master and the area developer and the multi-unit. Sometimes brands don't know the difference. And sometimes brands think that they can just change from a master to an area to a multi-unit. And I was just wondering, Brian, would you mind just speaking to that for me?
Sure. Yeah, this is definitely an area of confusion in the franchise world. So there's generally 4 different types of offerings, we'll call them initially. So there's the single unit, which is one location, one brick and mortar location, or one territory. And that's the only thing that's being, offered, right? So that's the traditional model that everybody thinks about. So we just call it single unit, and that's the one offering. Probably most people listening to this have a single unit FDD for sure. And that's kind of the base, right? So we have that. Then we have the multi-unit option, right? Which would be, and there's 2 things. We call it, there's multi-unit and there's multi-territory. And I'll go through that really quick. So multi-unit, the way we think about it internally would be if you have a brick and mortar that one franchisee wants to open up multiple locations where they have the time to develop a certain area, right? So let's say, for example, you're a franchisee, you want 5 units of XYZ restaurant, right? And you don't want anyone else coming into your territory as you're building out the first unit. So you're going to go to the franchisor and say, I would like to open up 5 locations total, but I don't want anyone else coming into my territory. Could I sign a multi-unit territory agreement, a multi-unit development agreement? There's kind of a few different terms for it, but everybody calls it a MUDA. You'll hear that term, multi-unit development agreement, which essentially means that there's going to be multiple unit franchise agreements signed throughout a certain duration, right? So you as the franchisee, let's say, would have 5 years to develop the 5 territories. And me as the franchisor would agree, we're not going to sell to anyone else in your protected area for 5 years, provided you comply with the development schedule and do all the do the right things. And you're opening up locations. I agree to give you that time to develop that territory, right? So that's the multi-unit option. Now, if we're talking about a territory type FDD, right? Usually that'll be, for example, like a service-based offering, not brick and mortar, but let's say a lawn care company that you sell actually territories, not necessarily brick and mortar, radiuses, right? So if I'm a franchisee, I'm gonna have a territory. It could be comprised of zip codes, whatever the case is. So in that case, we internally, at the law firm, would set up a multi-territory option, meaning that I'm a franchisee. I can sign one agreement that covers 3 different territories, right? So we kind of put them in the same category: multi-unit, multi-territory. But that either way, it means one franchisee buying multiple territories or locations, or the ability to have locations. So just want to make that clear. But that's kind of the second tier, where the same person is opening up multiple territories or multiple locations. So you have unit and then multi-unit or multi-territory. Then the third one going down the list is area developer or area representative. Now, this is a bit different than the first two, where the area developer will actually have the ability to open up their own locations or sell locations to a third party, another franchisee. So the example would be, I'm an area representative. I buy a territory that can fit 10 locations in the one territory, right? Usually they're generally bigger territories. And I say to the franchisor, I'm going to open up one of these myself, but I'm going to sell the other 9 to other franchisees. Those franchisees will sign unit FDDs, unit franchise agreements, and they're going to be part of the franchise system, but they're going to be in my territory, right? So essentially, the area developer is more like a salesperson selling. They bought a piece of land and they're selling franchises within that territory. Now, they also have a development schedule, right? There's a certain, let's say if I buy it for 10, I have a certain period of time to develop all 10, right? Or sell all 10 and have them developed. So there is a time schedule to it as well. And it usually, and the difference really between the multi-unit and the area developer, let's say, is that the fees are generally split. There's some sort of split between the franchise fees and the royalties. So in the scenario that we were just talking about, area developer sells one of the units in their territory to an unrelated franchisee. That franchisee pays let's say there's a $40,000 franchise fee that goes to the franchisor, and now area developer and franchisor split that $20,000. So they split that franchise fee, and then they also split any royalties. So if it's a 6% royalty, it could be 3 and 3. It doesn't have to be split evenly. I'm just using that as an example, but they share fees together. Now the area developer is a salesperson, but they'll also, generally speaking, have to support franchisees within their territory as well. So they act as like a mini franchisor. They're answering calls, doing things, visiting client sites, franchisee sites, things like that. So they kind of step in. They're kind of an in-between an area, between the franchisor and franchisee, and they're kind of working that. So that's why they get the fees split. So that's the distinction between the area developer, also called area representative. A lot of these terms are kind of used interchangeably, and you'll hear it. So that's why there's some confusion there, oftentimes. And then, so you have those 3 generally. You have the unit, single unit, right, or single territory. We have the multi-unit, right? That's the second one. We have the area developer, or area representative. That's the third one. And then the last one on the list is the master franchise, right? So the master is very similar to the area developer, area representative, right? We're giving them a piece of land where they can go and sell sell unit territories in that piece of land. They also have development schedules, things like that. So the only real distinction between the master and the area developer is that there's really two. One is that the master is responsible for their own FDD. They do not rely on the franchisor's FDD. The master creates their own, and they're sending that out to prospects in their territory, but they're using their own. Usually, it's modeled after the franchisors anyway, but they're responsible for any registrations and things like that. So they take on more legal responsibility, more so than the area representative, who's going to rely on the franchisor to handle all the legal needs and things like that. Also, it's the flow of funds. The master will collect all fees and then pay the split to the franchisor, right? So they're taking on all the fees and collecting them, and then paying the difference to the franchisor, as opposed to the area developer, where the franchisor collects the fees and gives it to the area developer, right? So just the flow of funds is a bit different, and the legal responsibilities are different. So generally, you see the master is more often used in bigger pieces of land, right? So let's say we don't want to, we want to sell the state of California. We don't want to deal with it. So you would have a master in California. They're in charge of California. They have to register in California. They're totally responsible. They do their own audited financials, right? So they have their own legal responsibilities. We don't really hear about it. We're not really involved. We just get a check for our percentage of the fees, and that's generally the distinction between a master and area representative. Very close. They're a lot of the idea is similar, right? Someone buys a territory to sell unit locations within that territory. So and it's just those little nuances that are a bit different. The flow of funds, who collects and who distributes, and the legal requirements are generally. This is not set in stone either. There are, variations, but I'm speaking generally.
Well, great differentiators between the four models. As a franchisor, when do they need to decide if they're set up as a single unit? Can they decide mid-year that they want to now offer multi-unit, or does it need to be part of their FDD going into the year?
Yeah, so all these units, all these different types of offerings have to be separately disclosed. They have to be disclosed. You can't just wake up one day and say I want a master, a master franchisee, and just give him the unit FDD. So what we recommend typically is the unit and the multi-unit. Those can be in the same FDD. Those can be disclosed together. And even if you're not offering the multi-unit, let's say even renewal season's coming around the corner. If you're not, you don't have a multi-unit option currently, you would want to ask your attorneys to prepare a multi-unit option in your unit FDD. And this way, if it does happen during the year, you can offer it. And just because it's in your FDD doesn't mean you have to offer it, right? So it doesn't really hurt it being put in your FDD. You may say, you know what, we're not ready to offer multi-units, or we don't like it right now. We're not positioned correctly. You don't have to offer it, at any point. So, but I think it is a great tool. I think, brokers like that option if they have, if they come across someone who wants, multi-territories, the fees are higher. And so it does translate into faster growth if you find a good franchisee that you want to have multi-units. It's a good option. So we always recommend putting it in, even if you're not going to use it. Now, the area representative is a totally separate FDD. You cannot use the unit FDD that you have to offer that to any prospect because it's not disclosed. It's a totally separate FDD. So if you come across someone who does want to be an area representative, you need to prepare a totally separate FDD. If it's a registration state, you need to register it in that state or file it, and you'll always have those multi FDDs, right? So you can't just offer area representative you can't make that offer with the regular unit FDD. It's illegal. Same thing with the master. If you have a master relationship, even if you have an area representative, agreement, and you don't have a master FDD, you need a separate master. So all these are different. So you would probably need 3 different FDDs if you were going to offer 3 different options. All those 4 options, you would need 3 FDDs. So the single unit, along with the multi-unit, the area representative, and the master. So they're definitely different FDDs, different offerings, and you're not legally allowed to sell without disclosing it first.
So is the timeline for filing all 3 of those FDDs the same, or can you mid-year decide you want to offer the area or the master and now add that FDD?
Yeah, you can create that FDD at any time, right? So
Okay.
if you come across mid-year and you say, you know what, we got this great opportunity, let's do this, area representative arrangement. So you would call your attorney and say, we need to prepare an area representative FDD. They would get that. And then now that agreement that they sign, if let's say they move forward and sign, they're not signing a franchise agreement on day one. They're signing an area representative agreement. And that agreement looks a lot different. That agreement's about sharing fees and who's responsible for what and things like that. And if, compared to the unit FDD and unit franchise agreement, that's going to be about who pays royalties and, things like that. So they're 2 very different agreements and two very different, relationships, really.
So as an emerging brand starting out, would it be advisable for them to work on the single unit and multi-unit first, okay, and then move into the area and the master down the road?
Definitely. I think you have to be ready to not only offer that, because it's a much higher scale. It scales much quicker, right? So now you have an area representative who's going to build 10 locations in 5 years, right? You need to make sure you can handle that bandwidth, even though they're taking on some of the responsibilities. You definitely want to make sure you're ready for it. So we typically recommend doing the unit with a multi-unit offering, multi-territory offering, right? Just to have it, kind of get acclimated to make sure you're able to support and train and do all the things you need to do. Then once you have that framework set up, then you can kind of turn the switch and try to scale through area representative agreements or masters.
Okay, this is extremely helpful, and I can't tell you, it comes up several times a month, okay, that we get asked questions regarding this, especially from a lot of emerging brands. Let me just ask you one last question about the territories. Setting up territories, is that something that I can change my mind on as a franchisor or emerging brand after my FDD is filed? So for example, I'm in Philadelphia, and suppose I was a new franchisor and I wanted to decide I want to offer the entire state of Pennsylvania now. Is that something that I would have to have disclosed in a change of territory like that, or is that okay for me to do?
Yeah, this definitely is an issue that comes up a lot. So a couple things. One, the typically, and we recommend doing this. And I've seen FDDs that don't have like a recommended territory size, Madam 12 of the FDD. So usually you have some sort of framework as to what a typical territory looks like. And to answer your question, the reality is that we don't really have. There's no legal obligations necessarily that says we're locked into a territory or not. But there are a lot of indirect issues when it comes to this issue, because one of the things that we want to strive for is to have a uniform item 19, right? That which is going to be really that's really what's going to drive sales, the most, where you have a strong item 19, and prospective franchisees are looking at numbers and things like that. So when we're not kind of staying in line, generally speaking, with the territory sizes of each territory as we grow our system, you can't really compare the numbers, right? So if your territory size is the entire state of, let's say the entire city of Philadelphia, for example, and my territory size is a county in New Jersey, right? You have 3 million people in your territory. I have 50,000, right? You can't really legally compare the two territories accurately, right? Your territory is obviously going to be much stronger than mine, or it should be. So now, if my typical territory is 50,000 people, and you have a territory, with 3 million people, we can't show those numbers, and not have any, potential liability there, because your numbers are going to be much more than what a future franchisee would likely, have in that scenario, right? You're going to have a lot more people. Your territory is much bigger. You should have much more sales. So they'll say that whatever our item 19 shows is not comparable to what we're offering, and that creates legal liability, and you're gonna have issues with the states and things like that. So, so the answer is, we generally don't want to. There's no real perfect math, but generally speaking, you don't want to deviate too much. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? So if we disclose 50,000 people in our item 12, and we have 53,000, right? But just the way the map works out, that's comparable, right? And that's workable. But you really don't want to go too far outside of what you're showing in your item 12, not more than 10%, 20%, something like that, where you have so you have a little leeway, but we don't want to deviate too much, or else that's going to skew the item 19, which is going to impact sales later and create a lot of problems for you later. So that was a long-winded answer, but just because people don't think about the implications of doing it, right? They just want to close a deal. I might as well just give them all Philadelphia. I have no one else interested. I'm just going to do it anyway. But that one decision is going to hurt you down the road, and now you're gonna have a mess to deal with as far as territories and item 19s, and it's just not going to be good. So if you can kind of keep that philosophy from day one, long term, you're going to be so much better off kind of keeping it uniform. So in that scenario, if it's a multi-territory option, you could say, okay, Philadelphia, that is comparable to 8 territories. I'll say 8 territories, or something like that. Or we believe we can get, fit 8 units in Philadelphia. We'll give you a multi-unit, opportunity if you want to open up multiple locations. But generally speaking, we want to stay uniform as much as we can, as much as we possibly can.
Well, that's extremely helpful. And our whole conversation today is just been great. Is there any last thoughts you have as we wrap up this topic and I let you run back to your law practice?
No, I think it's really just important to have a long-term view, right? So like I said, we kind of see franchises from startup and make the decisions they're making then, and they're different types of decisions because they're in a different position than a more mature brand would make. But those decisions that you make on day one will have an impact on your future, right? So you always want to you don't want to just close the deal to close a deal and do it short term. You want to think long term, and there's a great way to do it that's going to be beneficial long term. So what I would say is make sure you just have you're speaking to knowledgeable people, people on your team, your attorney. If you don't have anyone to reach out to on the legal side, we're happy to take any questions. Anyone involved with FranServe, or anyone anyone has a question that you want to send over. Obviously, we're more than happy to jump on a call with them. But you definitely want to have a view towards the future and really try to maximize long-term growth. And we see a lot of franchisors make some mistakes in the beginning, which is normal. It's typical. You want to close a deal, and things like that. But every decision, keep in mind that every decision you make has a long-term impact. So I think that would be really important to, if I can go back, if I had a time machine, a lot of the brands that we come across that have run into issues, I wish I can go back and tell them that and say, just kind of try to do it the right way.
Thank you. Yeah. That's a great point and great answer. So, Brian, what is the best email for you? And certainly, people can email me, joan@franserve.com. But if they wanted to email you directly, would that be okay? And what would that email be?
Absolutely. So my email, it's a bit long. It's BAL, boy, Apple, Larry, at business and spelled out, AND, franchiselawfirm.com. So BAL at business and franchiselawfirm.com.
Great. Thank you so much for your time
Thank
today.
you.
We really appreciate your time, as well as your partnership with FranServe. We look forward to seeing you again soon. And FranServe partners and consultants and guests, please feel free to reach out to Brian or myself, and I'll get you his contact information. So thank you all, and have a great rest of your day. Happy franchising.